Seeing what no one else wants to see is like walking down an endless corridor where the walls slowly move to crush you. Kafka knew, seeing the truth is a burden many cannot bear. Imagine waking up one day and realizing the world isn't what everyone says it is. It's like taking off a pair of colored glasses you've worn your whole life and suddenly seeing the real colors. Some people can do this. They'll look at their normal lives, their work, the rules of society, and realize there's something strange, something that doesn't make sense. Franz Kafka was one of those people. Kafka was born a long time ago, in 1883, and died young. At just 40, he wrote strange stories that many people didn't understand at the time. In one, a man wakes up transformed into a giant insect. In another, someone is accused of a crime but never discovers what the crime was. These stories may seem confusing, but they are like mirrors that reveal truths we'd rather not see. When a child asks, "Why do we have to do this?" and an adult answers, "Just because, there's a hidden truth there." Kafka was like that child, but he kept asking questions even after he grew up. He saw that many of the things we do every day have no real reason, we just keep doing them because someone told us to. Seeing these truths is like being in a room full of people, but being the only one who can hear a spooky song playing. You look around and ask, "Can't you hear that?" But everyone keeps smiling and talking as if nothing is happening. It's lonely, it's scary. It's what Kafka felt. The price of seeing what no one else wants to see is loneliness. It's feeling different, strange, as if you don't belong in the same world as other people. Kafka spent his entire life feeling this way, like a stranger in his own home, in his own skin. He worked in an office during the day, like many people. But at night, he wrote stories that showed how strange and meaningless this work, this normal life, was. He could see through the invisible walls that surround us, the rules we follow without question, the routines we repeat like machines. Some people prefer not to see these things. It's more comfortable to move on, do what everyone else does, not ask difficult questions. But for those who, like Kafka, can't help but see, there's a huge weight. It's like carrying a heavy secret that no one else understands. Today we're going to talk about that burden. We're going to talk about what it means to see the world as Kafka did, and why, even though it's painful, it might be important for some people to have that perspective. Because sometimes, to change something, we first need to see that something is wrong. We live surrounded by distractions, repetitive routines, and artificial noise. But when someone dares to look beyond the mask of everyday life, they discover that life is made up of meaningless repetitions, shallow relationships, and bureaucratic corridors that swallow our souls. The price of seeing this is loneliness, because others prefer to hide in the comfort of blindness. Have you ever stopped to think why so many people spend hours looking at their phones? Why do we watch TV shows we don't even like? Why do we buy things we don't need? There's a hidden pain inside us, a pain we don't want to feel. And so we create so many distractions to avoid having to look at it. It's like a noisy house. If you turn on the television, the radio, the washing machine, the vacuum cleaner, all at the same time, you can't hear the dripping of the broken faucet. Distractions work like this. They're noises that prevent you from hearing the silence, and in the silence we often find difficult questions. Kafka saw this invisible pain. He realized that many people live entire lives without truly living. They wake up, work, come home, sleep, and do it all again the next day. Like hamsters running on a wheel, exerting themselves but never moving forward. And the saddest thing is that we often don't even realize we're stuck on this wheel. Think about the adults, you know. How many of them actually seem happy with their work? How many wake up excited to start the day? Many follow a routine they didn't choose, in jobs they don't enjoy, simply because they believe they have no choice. This is the invisible pain, feeling trapped in a life that doesn't feel like yours. And relationships between people can also be empty. How many times have you seen adults talking about the weather, the news, things that happened, but never talking about how they really feel? As if there were a secret agreement. Let's just talk about easy things, nothing too deep or real. Kafka saw that there are many unwritten rules like this. Rules that no one explains, but everyone follows. If you break these rules, people look at you strangely. They think you're different, weird. And so we learn to follow the rules, even without understanding why. Invisible pain is like a ghost haunting our lives. We can't see it directly, but we feel its presence. It's that feeling that something is missing, that life could be more than this, that we're missing something important as we go about our daily routines. And the worst part is that when someone like Kafka points out this pain, many people don't want to listen. It's as if he's breaking that secret agreement, talking about things that should stay hidden. People prefer to keep pretending that everything is fine, that life makes sense just the way it is. Therefore, seeing what no one else wants to see brings loneliness. Kafka felt alone even when surrounded by people, because he saw things others preferred to ignore. This is the pain of those who see beyond the masks, beyond the forced smiles, beyond the superficial conversations. If this has already spoken to you, subscribe now and leave a like so you don't miss the next videos. Kafka wrote, "A book must be the axe that breaks the sea of ice within us." He knew that seeing the invisible hurts. It means breaking the ice of conformity, the mirror of normality. It's like realizing that work doesn't liberate, but enslaves, that social conversations don't connect, but drive us apart. Kafka wasn't just talking about his time, he was talking about ours. Imagine a frozen lake in winter. The surface seems solid, safe, you can even walk on it. But underneath there's water, there's life, there's movement. Ice is like the lies we tell ourselves, the illusions we create to make life easier to bear. Kafka wanted to break this ice with his stories. When he says a book should be like an axe, he's talking about awakening, about waking up from a deep sleep and seeing reality as it is, not as we wish it were. And that hurts. It hurts like the cold of water when ice breaks. In Kafka's stories, ordinary people find themselves in strange and frightening situations. In the Metamorphosis, Gregor Samsa wakes up transformed into an insect. His family, who once claimed to love him, begins to treat him like a monster, like a problem. This shows how fragile human love can be, how we can be rejected when we are no longer useful. In the trial, Joseph K. is arrested without knowing why. He spends the entire book trying to understand what he's accused of, talking to people who don't explain anything clearly, filling out meaningless paperwork. It seems absurd, but how often in real life are we forced to follow rules we don't understand? How many times do we feel judged without knowing exactly what we did wrong? In The Castle, a man named K tries to get to a castle to work, but he never makes it. There are always obstacles, people telling him he needs another piece of paper, another permit. Doesn't this remind you of the times we need to get something done in a government agency and are sent from one place to another, never getting what we need? Kafka saw that work, instead of giving us freedom, often imprisons us. He himself worked at an insurance company and hated it. He saw how people became machines, doing the same tasks day in and day out, slowly losing their humanity. He saw how bosses treated employees like spare parts that could be replaced at any time. And he also realized that conversations between people are rarely genuine. We talk, but we don't truly communicate. We're together, but we feel alone. We use words to hide what we really feel, not to reveal it. What's most striking is that, even though he wrote over 100 years ago, Kafka seems to speak directly to us today. The world has changed a lot since his time, but the traps he described remain the same. We're still trapped in meaningless work. We still follow absurd rules. We still feel small in the face of gigantic systems we can't control. Kafka's voice is like a disturbing whisper in your ear. Wake up, see what's happening. Don't accept the absurd as normal. It's a voice that bothers you, that won't let you go back to sleep once you've heard it. And maybe that's exactly what we need, to be disturbed, questioned, awakened from the comfortable slumber of normality. Today, Kafkaesque absurdity doesn't just reside in the infinite courtrooms or the unreachable castles of his stories. It's present in the endless lines at a public hospital, in waiting for an unanswered work email, in the endless scrolling through social media that offers nothing but emptiness. Seeing this is painful, because most people prefer to laugh at memes rather than feel the vertigo of reality. The world Kafka imagined in his stories wasn't confined to books. It escaped and spread into our daily lives. It's everywhere, if we know where to look, and once we start seeing it, we can't stop seeing these absurdities. Think about the last time you or someone you know needed to get something done at a public hospital. The seemingly endless line, the tired people waiting for hours. The employee who, when you finally see someone, tells you you're in the wrong place and need to go to another department. And when you get there, you discover the system is down and you have to come back another day. Doesn't it sound like something straight out of a Kafka novel? Or think about modern work. You send an important email and wait, and no one responds. Or worse, you get an automated response saying your message is very important, but you know no one will actually read it. How many hours of your day are spent filling out reports that no one will read, attending meetings that could be resolved with an email, following procedures that exist only because it's always been that way? And what about social media? We spend hours scrolling down the screen, seeing photos of people pretending to be happy, funny videos that make us laugh for 2 seconds and then forget about them, news that makes us angry but that we can't change. We scroll, as if we're searching for something, but what exactly? It's a bottomless pit, a digital maze with no way out, where we waste hours of our lives without gaining anything in return. Kafka would understand our world perfectly. He would see how we are controlled, not by a cruel dictator, but by invisible algorithms that decide what we see, what we buy, even what we think. He would see how we have become dependent on machines that were supposed to serve us, but have ended up becoming our masters. The saddest thing is that, instead of questioning these absurd situations, we often prefer to escape them through superficial distractions. Instead of asking why we have to wait so long in a hospital line, we share a funny meme about the situation. Instead of questioning why we spend 8 hours a day at an unfulfilling job, we watch videos of cute kittens to forget the problem for a few minutes. It's easier to laugh at the absurd than to confront it. It's more comfortable to distract ourselves than to feel the vertigo that comes when we realize that many things in our lives don't make sense. But this escape comes at a price. The more we run away, the more the absurd grows and takes over our lives. Kafka didn't shy away. He looked directly at the absurd, described it in detail, exposed it in all its strangeness. And maybe that's what we need to do. Stop running away, stop distracting ourselves, and start really seeing what's happening around us. Because only when we see the problem can we begin to think of solutions. Only when we recognize the absurd can we begin to imagine a different world, where things make more sense, where people are treated as human beings and not numbers, where time is spent on things that truly matter. Comment here. Which part of your life seems most like absurd theater? The tragedy isn't just the crushing system, but also the mind that internalizes it. You believe you're a victim of its gears, but perhaps it's you who's shackling yourself. You reproduce the absurd. You accept the theater. And when you see this, you feel the vertigo of realizing that the prison is within you. There's a frightening moment when we begin to see the world as Kafka did. A moment when we realize that the problem isn't just out there, in systems, institutions, or other people. The problem is also within us. And this realization is like staring into an abyss. Think of all the times you've complained about something absurd, a pointless rule at school, a strange requirement at work, an unnecessary line but still obeyed, not because someone forced you, but because it seemed easier to go with the flow than to swim against it. In that moment, you weren't just a victim of the absurd, you helped keep it alive. Kafka understood this profoundly. In his stories, characters rarely struggle against the absurd. They try to adapt to it, try to understand its strange rules, try to function within it. In the Metamorphosis, Gregor's family doesn't question why he turned into an insect. They simply worry about how they'll pay the bills now that he can no longer work. In the trial, Joseph K. doesn't question the justice of the invisible court. He simply tries to figure out how to navigate its incomprehensible rules. And aren't we all like that? We complain about work, but we keep going every day. We complain about politics, but we rarely get involved in changing it. We complain about loneliness in big cities, but we keep looking at our phones instead of talking to strangers. Absurdity doesn't exist just because someone created it. It exists because we all, in some way, accept it. This is the dark twist, realizing that the prison has not only external walls, but also internal ones, that we are not only prisoners, but also, in part, our own jailers. That we carry the chains with us, even when no one is forcing us to wear them. It's like that story about the elephant in the circus. As a baby, he's tied to a stake in the ground by a chain. He tries to free himself, pulling and pulling, but he can't. Over time, he learns there's no point in trying. When he grows up and becomes strong enough to easily break the chain, he doesn't even try anymore. A thin cord is all it takes to keep him tied down, because the real prison is now in his mind. We're like this elephant. We believe we can't change things, that we have no choice, that this is just how the world works. And the more we repeat this to ourselves, the more it becomes true, not because it's actually true, but because we believe it is. Kafka saw this terrible cycle. He saw how we internalize the absurd, how we become part of it. And this frightened him more than any monster or nightmare. Because you can fight an external monster, but how can you fight something that has become part of you? This realization is dizzying. It's like looking in a mirror and not recognizing your own face. It's discovering that you yourself helped build the prison you now complain about. It's understanding that real change would require not only changing the world, but also changing yourself. That's why many people prefer not to see it. They prefer to believe they are merely victims of circumstances, that it's always someone else's fault, that they bear no responsibility for the state of things. It's more comfortable, easier to bear, but it's not the whole truth. True freedom begins when we stop deceiving ourselves, when we accept our participation in life's absurd theater, when we understand that we have choices, even if they are difficult, when we realize that the chains that bind us most are those we ourselves imposed. The price of seeing is bearing the pain of never being able to return to ignorance. You can't pretend not to notice the emptiness. You can't return to the comfortable slumber of alienation. This is where courage is born, not the courage to eliminate the absurd, but to face it as it is. The confrontation isn't with the world, but with the mirror. There's a saying, once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's like learning to read. Once you learn, you can no longer look at words and see only meaningless squiggles. Letters will always form words in your mind, whether you want them to or not. The same thing happens when you begin to see the world as Kafka did. Once you notice the absurdity in bank lines, in meaningless bureaucracy, in empty conversations, in repetitive routines, you can no longer ignore it. It's there, screaming at you, even when everyone around you seems to notice nothing strange. It's like having a special vision, but instead of being a superpower, it sometimes feels like a curse. Many people, when they begin to see these things, try to backtrack. They try to force themselves to ignore them, to accept them, to adapt. This is how the world works. They tell themselves there's no point in fighting it. And they sink even deeper into distractions, into momentary pleasures, into anything that might drown out the nagging voice of truth. But Kafka suggests a different path. Instead of trying not to see, why not face what we see? Instead of running away from the absurd, why not look directly at it, study it, understand it? Not to eliminate it because perhaps that's impossible, but to learn to live with it without being consumed by it. It's like being in a dark room with a monster. You can close your eyes and pretend it's not there, but you'll still feel its presence. Hear its breathing and fear its touch at any moment. Or you can open your eyes, look at the monster, and see its true form. Maybe it's less scary than you imagined. Maybe you can learn to share space with it. The real confrontation isn't with the external world. It's not about changing systems, overthrowing governments, or revolutionizing society, although these things can be important. The real confrontation is internal. It's about looking at yourself and asking, how do I participate in this absurdity? How do I feed it? How can I exist within it without losing my humanity? It's about looking in the mirror and recognizing that you're also part of the problem, that you also follow rules without question, that you also avoid difficult conversations, that you also distract yourself to avoid feeling empty, and accepting this not with guilt or shame, but with honesty. Because only from this honesty can some form of freedom be born. Courage lies not in eliminating the absurd. No one can do that alone, but in living consciously of it, in not letting it transform you, in preserving your humanity, your ability to question, your ability to see what others don't, even when it hurts. Kafka spent his entire life in this confrontation. He saw the absurd everywhere and wrote about it, not to change it, but to expose it, to understand it, to prevent it from blinding him like others. His stories are like flashlights pointed into dark corners we'd rather not illuminate. And perhaps this is the only kind of victory possible. Not eliminating the absurd, but refusing to be dominated by it. Not changing the entire world, but changing the way we exist in it. Not eliminating all questions, but continuing to ask them even when no one else does. Write in the comments, do you face the void or run away from it? Kafka, in his darkness, offers us a hidden lesson. The pain of seeing can transform into consciousness. The void doesn't have to be an enemy, it can be a mirror. Those who gaze into the abyss also find a chance to awaken. Lucidity is bitter, but it's the only thing that allows us to dance in the chaos without losing ourselves in it. In Kafka's stories, we almost never find happy endings. His characters rarely escape the absurd, rarely overcome oppressive systems, rarely find answers to their questions. At first glance, his books seem profoundly pessimistic, as if to say, there is no way out, we are all trapped. But there's a hidden lesson in his work, something not written directly on the pages, but which we can sense between the lines. It's like a secret message, visible only to those who know where to look. And that message says, seeing the truth, however painful, is already a form of freedom. Consider a patient who discovers they have a serious illness. The news is terrible, causing fear and sadness. But at the same time, knowing the truth allows them to make decisions, seek treatment, and use their time consciously. Ignorance may be more comfortable in the short term, but knowledge, even painful as it may be, offers possibilities that ignorance would never allow. Likewise, seeing the absurdity of the world as Kafka saw it is painful. It causes loneliness, discomfort, sometimes even despair, but it also brings a form of clarity most people never experience. It's like waking up from a confusing dream and finally understanding where you are, even if that place isn't where you want to be. The emptiness we feel when we realize the meaninglessness of many of our actions doesn't have to be just a black hole devouring us. It can be a mirror that shows us who we truly are, what we truly value, what we truly want from life. In the absence of externally imposed meanings, we have the opportunity to create our own. There are two ways to react when we gaze into the abyss. We can despair at its endless depth, its utter darkness, and feel small and insignificant before it. Or we can see that same depth as a space of possibilities, as a blank canvas where we can paint our own colors, create our own shapes. Kafka chose the second option. Although his stories are dark, the very act of writing them was a way to create meaning amid the absurd. He transformed his painful vision into art, his solitude into a connection with future readers who would feel the same way. He danced in the chaos without losing himself in it. The clarity that comes from seeing the world as it truly is can be bitter. It's like a bad-tasting medicine that, nevertheless, cures a serious illness. The bitterness lies in the recognition of difficult truths, that many of our social structures make no sense, that many of our relationships are superficial, that many of our certainties are illusions. But this same lucidity gives us a chance the chance to live consciously, to make choices based on reality rather than fantasy, to find small pockets of authenticity in a world full of falsehoods. It's the chance to be truly free, not because we escape the absurd, but because we recognize it and decide how we want to exist within it. Perhaps this is why, despite all their darkness, Kafka's works continue to attract readers, because beyond the discomfort they provoke, there is also a strange form of hope in them. Not the naive hope that everything will be fine, but the realistic hope that even in the midst of absurdity, we can maintain our humanity, our capacity to see, to question, to create. Kafka's hidden teaching is not fight the absurd and win, because he knew that it was impossible. The teaching is recognize the absurd and find ways to preserve your soul within it. It's about small inner victories, not grand external revolutions. It's about keeping the flame of consciousness burning even when everyone around prefers the comfortable darkness of ignorance. What about you? How many times have you felt out of place in your own life? How many times have you noticed that everyone around you pretends to be normal, while you carry the strange feeling that something doesn't fit? That's the price of seeing, feeling like a replaceable cog in a machine that spins me. Remember that time you were at a party, surrounded by people laughing and talking, but you felt completely alone? Or that family gathering where everyone was talking about things that seemed important, but you couldn't understand why they should matter? Or that day at work or school when you stopped for a second and thought, what am I doing here? What's the point of all this? These moments are small, Kafkaesque windows into our lives. Moments when the mask of normalcy slips for a few seconds and we see the emptiness that lies behind it. Most people quickly replace the mask, look away, and return to superficial conversation, to their comfortable routine. But some of us get stuck in this moment of clarity, unable to pretend we didn't see what we saw. It's a strange feeling, isn't it? As if everyone around you is watching a different movie than you, reacting to scenes you can't see, ignoring things that are obvious to you. It's like being in a dream where you're the only one who knows you're dreaming. Kafka felt this way all the time. In a letter to a friend, he wrote, "I am separated from all things by an empty space, and it doesn't even occur to me to try to cross it." He felt there was an invisible distance between himself and the rest of the world, a space that could not be crossed, no matter how hard he tried. This sense of displacement comes from seeing something others don't see, or choose not to see. You notice the absurdity in the little everyday things that seem perfectly normal to others. You notice how people follow invisible scripts in their conversations, how they repeat phrases they've heard elsewhere without really thinking about them, how they live lives that seem planned by someone else. And when you try to point these things out, the reactions are rarely positive. People get uncomfortable, change the subject, look at you like you're weird. Because you're breaking the silent agreement that keeps society functioning. The agreement not to question too much, not to look too closely, to accept things as they are. That's why it's lonely to see what no one else wants to see, because you become a foreigner in your own culture, a stranger in your own family, sometimes even a stranger to yourself. You can no longer fully identify with the roles you're supposed to play, the good employee, the good student, the good son, the good citizen. Because you see the arbitrariness of these roles, the way they were constructed not to serve people, but to make people serve larger systems. Kafka used a powerful metaphor for this feeling. He said that a book should be the axe for the frozen sea within us. The frozen sea is the layer of habits, social conventions, expectations, and lies we build around ourselves to make life bearable. And when something breaks this icebook and experience, a moment of clarity, we feel both fear and relief. Fear because we don't know what lies in the depths of this sea. Relief because we can finally breathe fresh air. The price of watching is high. It's feeling out of place, replaceable, sometimes even unnecessary in a world that values conformity over clarity. But there's also a reward, the possibility of a more authentic, more conscious, more truly your own life. Not because you escape the absurd, but because you know it exists and choose how you want to navigate it. After a certain point, there is no turning back. That's the point we must reach. This quote from Kafka is not just a warning, it's also an invitation. The point of no return is when you've seen what no one else wants to see, and from that point on, all that's left is to walk the dark corridor to the end. There comes a moment in life when vision becomes irreversible, like a door that, once passed through, disappears behind you, like knowledge that, once acquired, cannot be unlearned. Kafka calls this the point of no return, and suggests something surprising, that we should seek this point, not avoid it. Why would anyone consciously seek a path of no return? Why would they choose to see things that cause discomfort, loneliness, sometimes even despair? The answer lies in the second part of the sentence. It is this point that we must reach. Kafka doesn't say we should just accept this point if we find it by accident. He says we should actively seek it. Think of a person trapped in a dark cave. They could choose to stay where they are, accustoming their eyes to the darkness, convincing themselves they can see enough to survive. Or they could walk toward a small, distant light, knowing the path will be difficult and that, once their eyes adjust to the light, they will never again be able to live comfortably in the dark. The point of no return is like that exit from the cave. It's painful, scary, and lonely. But it's also the only path to a more complete form of existence. It's the moment we stop hiding behind comfortable illusions and begin to live in reality, however difficult it may be. When Kafka says that after a certain point, there is no turning back, he is acknowledging the price of seeing. He is saying that once you truly see the absurdity of the world, the meaninglessness of many of our institutions and practices, the superficiality of many of our relationships, you can no longer pretend you haven't seen it. You can no longer innocently participate in the same routines, the same empty conversations, the same meaningless rituals. But when he concludes by saying, this is the point we need to reach, he's suggesting that this price, however high, is worth paying. that the pain of conscience is preferable to the comfort of ignorance, that it's better to see the world as it really is, with all its strangeness and absurdity, than to live in a fantasy version that shields us from the truth. The dark corridor Kafka mentions is the journey that comes after this point of no return. It's the process of learning to live with what you've seen, of finding ways to exist in a world that now seems strange and hostile, of preserving your humanity when it would be easier to give it up. This corridor has no shortcuts. There are no easy answers, quick fixes, or detailed maps. Each person who enters it must find their own path, create their own meaning, discover their own forms of resistance. It's a lonely path, but also deeply personal and potentially transformative. And perhaps this is what Kafka was seeking throughout his work, not just to expose the absurd, but to find ways to live within it without being consumed by it, not just to point to the void, but to discover what might exist beyond it, not just to diagnose the disease of modernity, but to seek, even if without guarantees of success, some form of cure. Kafka's invitation to seek the point of no return is not an invitation to despair, but to a deeper form of hope. Not the naive hope that ignores problems, but the lucid hope that acknowledges them and still chooses to keep moving forward. The hope that knows the darkness is real, but believes there is something valuable in moving through it. This is the climax of Kafkaesque philosophy, the moment we realize that seeing what no one else wants to see is not only a burden, but also an opportunity. An opportunity to live more consciously, more authentically, more truly human in a world that constantly tries to reduce us to mere cogs in a machine. Seeing the invisible has a price, but it also has a value, inner freedom. Those who accept seeing never go blind again. Those who accept the void never get lost in the theater. We've reached the end of our journey through Kafka's world, that strange yet familiar landscape where the absurd lurks in the most ordinary corners of everyday life. We've seen how Kafka's vision can be painful, lonely, and sometimes even desperate, how it separates us from others, makes us question things most prefer to ignore, and places us in an uncomfortable space between comfortable illusion and difficult truth. But we also saw that there is value in this vision, something precious that can only be found through it. Inner freedom, not the freedom to do whatever you want, to escape life's limitations, to live without restrictions. This freedom doesn't exist, and Kafka would be the first to laugh at anyone who believed in it. The freedom he offers is more subtle, more profound, the freedom to see clearly, to not be deceived, to not deceive oneself. Those who accept seeing the world as it truly is, with all its absurdity and strangeness, can no longer return to the comfortable blindness of the majority. It's like learning to read. Once you know the letters, you can no longer look at a text and see only meaningless squiggles. Vision permanently transforms the way you experience the world, and whoever accepts the void of meaning in many of our practices and institutions, the void in superficial conversations, the void in relationships based solely on social conventions, whoever accepts this void no longer gets lost in the theater that most people mistake for reality. This doesn't mean giving up on the world, isolating oneself from it, rejecting it completely. Kafka didn't do that. He continued working at his desk job, continued participating in social life, continued navigating the same absurd structures he described in his books. But he did so with a consciousness most lack, with a gaze that saw through masks, with a clarity that wasn't fooled by appearances. There's a quote attributed to an ancient philosopher: "The truth will set you free, but first it will make you suffer." This could be the summary of Kafka's message. Seeing the truth hurts. It causes loneliness, discomfort, sometimes even despair. But it also liberates in a way nothing else can. It liberates us from illusion, from self-deception, from unconscious participation in systems that diminish our humanity. And this freedom, however difficult it may be to achieve and maintain, is worth the price we pay for it. It's worth the loneliness, the discomfort, even the moments of despair, because it's the only way to truly live as human beings in a world that constantly tries to turn us into machines, into numbers, into replaceable cogs in a giant machine. Kafka doesn't offer easy answers, magic solutions, or shortcuts to happiness. What he offers is far more valuable: a gaze that penetrates beyond appearances, a voice that speaks truths we'd rather not hear, a mirror that shows not only what we are, but what we could be if we had the courage to see clearly. So what do we do with this vision? How do we live after seeing what cannot be unseen? Each of us must find our own path, but perhaps we can begin by recognizing that we are not alone, that others, like Kafka, saw the same things and found ways to continue living, to create beauty amid the absurd, to preserve their humanity in a world that tries to deny it. Perhaps we can form a community of seers, people who choose to see clearly even when it would be easier to close their eyes. People who refuse to participate in the theater without questioning their scripts, who insist on asking difficult questions even when no one wants to hear them, who seek ways to exist authentically in a world that prefers comfortable falsehood to uncomfortable truth. If this message touched you, comment here, "I accept the void," and don't forget to watch the video on the card, because it completes this journey.